Okay, hello everybody, and we are live now with On the Couch sessions. Hi Julie, how are you today?
I'm good, thanks, Sally. Great to be catching up with you again for our On the Couch session, talking about all things EFT.
Yes, great, isn't it? I'm really enjoying it actually, Julie, and it's as everybody knows, it's our passion. We love sharing this stuff. They're simple tools to help you feel better, ultimately.
Yeah,
So this week we thought we'd talk a little bit about a common theme that runs through, I think, everybody's life, and certainly a lot of the clients that I see, which is that thing about comparing ourselves to others. And, it can take form in many different ways. And some examples are things like, I can have people talk about sometimes, they're sat on the bus coming to see me, and you know I ask them, so what's it like seeing it on the bus? Do you just sit there and are you quite content with yourself? And they'll often feedback things like, no, I'm looking around the bus and I'm looking at people and checking them out and thinking something about them, and looking back at themselves thinking I don't look like them, or I wonder if they're happier than me, or if they're all together and their life's going really well and maybe mine's not. And so it's this thing that it's almost like a mantra that people can have that they walk around with. And I don't know if you can relate to that, Julia, but I know I certainly have that. And I think no matter how much work you do on yourself, it's just this inherent humanness in us.
definitely.
And I think when
You
you
know,
become the awareness behind it. Sorry, go ahead, Julie.
no, it's fine. There's a bit of delay here, so it's kind of funny because if we're talking over each other, sorry guys. I was going to say, Ali, I've even sort of compared myself to you sometimes. And I thought, oh, she seems to be doing that really well, better than me. And I think it's not something that, as you say, it's innate in all of us. And it's just the constant, it's just once you get the awareness that we're all okay and it's not a competition, everybody's up to, their own level at any given time. It's just the gradual giving yourself a bit of a nod and saying, it's okay. You're doing okay, and just keep doing that. I don't think it's a matter of having a great big change in your life that suddenly you're never going to worry about that. I think it's constantly being aware and just pulling yourself back. It's okay.
Yes, it is. It is. It's absolutely that, and it's funny you said that about comparing yourself to me, because we do it, and I've done it about you. And this is what I love about On the Couch sessions. We're real people. We have real feelings. We have oddball days where we feel a bit crackers and mad, and then some days we feel a little bit better. And I think that goes with the whole comparison thing too. It's just like we were saying. It's about being aware of it and catching yourself, and the more you're aware, the more you find tools to help yourself feel better about yourself,
Mm.
the more awareness you have. And then you kind of go, well, I don't need to go down that alley of comparing myself to this friend, who I think seems to be really sorted, or, doesn't seem to complain as much as I do. And, it's when you really start to catch yourself, isn't it? And then doing the work, and maybe, of course, using EFT tapping can really, really help with that. There's many different ways around approaching it, but the way I see it, and through the experience for myself and clients, of course it just comes down to not feeling good enough and not accepting yourself. Because of course when you accept all of you, you've no need to compare yourself to anybody else, because you're comfortable in your skin even with your imperfections, if you like. And there's other things that come into play, aren't there, Julie? Like, when you're feeling a bit more tired, it can run havoc, and if you're feeling great and you've had a really good day, or you've had a brilliant week of sleep, you don't, those thoughts don't seem to manifest as much. So it's being aware of not only just that, but what we're eating, if we're getting enough sleep, and just being mindful to get our body and ourselves in the right environment to really feel better about ourselves more of the time, so we don't fall into that trap of comparing ourselves to somebody on a magazine, or to your partner's ex-girlfriend, or, there's so many ways, aren't there, that we can compare ourselves.
Mm. I think so too, and I think that women expect so much more of themselves these days too. And now I'm sounding like a nana, but it's really, really true. Like, it was really enough to be a wife and you know, looking, loving your house, loving your garden, loving bringing up your kids, and I think that that's still okay. There's still a lot of women out there like that, but I think there's also, it's almost like a badge that people earn for busyness. It's almost like the busiest person wins these days, who multitask and do 1,000 things at once. And I think it puts a lot of pressure, to try and do all of those things at once. Sometimes it's just put more pressure on. It's given women more choice, but I think some people have really taken it that they have to do all of those things. What are your thoughts, Al?
Yes, I completely agree. And this is where I love you, Julie, because we're so kind of in sync with these things. I think it's great to share thoughts about it because, yeah, it's there's so much on offer now, isn't there? Especially with women in business, and I notice it myself. It's like trying to keep up with the Joneses kind of thing. You see what people are doing, and you think, oh, I should try that, should do that, because you're comparing again, and there's no need to. And if I'd like to make reference to Eckhart Tolle, or Eckhart Tolle, I never know how to say his name. When we're present in each and every moment, and we feel good in that moment, we'll then do what makes us feel good, not do what we think we should do to be better or like that other person. And it's so true, isn't it? There's so much drive now to do better, to be better, to have more, to be more, to manifest this and manifest that. And it's like we need to just take stock and just be really grateful and really happy with where we're at. And of course, there are things we have to sort of do, especially when we're working in business or how you behave in the home or how you are with your family, like you're saying, your garden and things. But taking that pressure off yourself to not have to, create more to be more is such a key, isn't it? It's, we are enough, and we often have enough.
Yeah, I think that's it. I've got, people in my life, and no, I won't say that. Take that back. Sometimes people can spend their whole life living in, waiting for this future destination where they're going to feel so great about themselves, and that's the only thing. That's where they're never present. They never accept themselves where they're up to right now. It's all about, well, this time we will have this, and this is going to have happened, and this is going to have happened, and I'll be have this much money in the bank, and everything will all be good. But it's kind of like always living your life in the future, and you never get to live at present. I think that's one of the things I really love about the emotional freedom techniques, the EFT tapping, because it really centers people and brings them back to the moment, so that they're really okay with themselves just as they are right now, and they have a really healthy respect that life's a process, but right now, you know what, it's okay. And tell me, where do you think most of with your clients, where do you think most of those messages of just having to be better than the next person, where do you think they come from? Like, in your experience with your clients?
Yeah, I think all sorts of places, and it's something that I cover quite a lot in my training as well, because it's a good question, because it really makes you think, well, why am I thinking like that? Why am I behaving like that? And it's often these beliefs, isn't it, that we have picked up along the way. And I'd say, predominantly most people, when I work with them using the EFT or the matrix reimprinting, we go back to the playground, or we go back to when they're little, and so-and-so in the family said, oh, you're not like your sister, or you could behave better, or your marks at school are not like your brothers, and or just somebody's bullied them in the playground and said something about them, and they've made it mean that they're not good enough, and that that the other person is good enough, and so therefore they've made that comparison there. So there's so many different ways, but in my experience, I think a lot of it goes back to childhood. Not always. I mean, obviously there's some things that can happen in relationships, intimate relationships or friendships, where something's gone wrong, and one of them's kind of blamed the other person for not being good enough, and saying and criticizing them, and you know, about how they are in the world. And, you know, depending on where we're at the time and how we process that information is the perception, isn't it? And then we go on to live that out, and it's not even our own truth, it's somebody else's.
That's
So,
exactly
yeah,
right.
it can come
It
from
can be
so many
misguided.
different places.
Sorry, I talked over you, darling. There is a delay. You know, to me,
No, that's okay. Yes. Yeah.
it all boils down to self-love, because when you really think about it, the reason why you do want to shine, and you know, I always encourage people to shine, but you know, the reason why is because some people equate that with being loved. You know, so for example, going back to what you were just talking about, you know, well, you're not getting as good a grades as your brother or whatever. It's almost like, well, if I get as good a, you know, this is a form of rejection. So if I get good grades and I shine and are even more shiny than him, they're going to love me more. And so, but it doesn't equate, you know, but in our minds, I think often it does, you know.
Yes. That's right. Sorry, there is a delay, isn't there? It's exactly that. It's what we make it mean, because you'll get one family where you'll get siblings, you know, and they have the same upbringing, they have, you know, the same, perceived to have the same amount of love and support from the family, but one sibling will make this mean that, and the other one won't make this mean that. And it's purely down to the individual about how they are at processing that information and what they make it mean. And that's the key thing, isn't it? And I'm sure you experience this too when you work with people. It ultimately comes down to the belief system, and where did that belief start? Where did it come from? And tracing it back to, well, actually, I remember, you know, when I was 15 and I was playing with my girlfriends, and there was 5 of us, and then 4 of them I felt like were ganging up on me because they said I didn't look right when I was going out that night, you know. And then there's a whole sort of flow-on effect of them starting to doubt themselves and who they are and having to fit into a certain box, you know. So there's so many examples, aren't there, Julie, of how we can relate to certain times in our life. But it's so good when we use the technique EFT that we can start clearing some of that old stuff out, and then it's just like remembering who we are, because it's just that we've forgotten, that's all. It's not that we're sometimes discovering new things, it's actually going, well, this is actually who I really am. And the freedom in that and the peace in that is kind of invaluable, really, isn't it?
Definitely. And, you know, I think it's fast too. That's what I love. Like within one session sometimes, you know, you get people laughing. Oh, my God, like, I've been thinking this thing about myself for so many years. And as we always say, you know, you've got a 6-year-old running the show because somebody said something to you when you were 6, just as a flippant aside. And like you said, you take it on board as your truth. If somebody says, you know, I can remember when I was at school, actually, a teacher telling me I was garrulous, and I didn't even know what it meant. So I went home and looked it up in the dictionary. And it means really talkative, you know, like you never shut up, basically. So obviously I was being a bit disruptive. And for ages after that, I became quite shy, because I thought, oh, well, obviously being garrulous is a really bad thing, so I'd better shut up and not talk much, you know. It didn't work for long, though, you know. Probably a decade, and then I said, more. But it's a perfect example of, you know, you think, well, I shouldn't be. If somebody said it in a certain tone, obviously that's a bad thing I'm being, so I've got to stop being it. And often you go completely the other way, you know. But yeah, it's interesting when you're working with clients and they'll have some perception about themselves that just you can see isn't true. But it's like the anorexia thing, you know, when people look in a mirror and they really think they're overweight. It's the same with emotional traits. You know, people will think that they're difficult, and you can just tell from the minute they walk in, they're actually not difficult at all. They're really open, wonderful human beings, but they've been told it at some stage, and so therefore they become, you know, they won't speak up ever. So, you know, getting people to release that, where they've got a right to be heard, you know, it's life changing. It's really great. Is there anything else you want to add?
It is, isn't it? And it's, yeah, I was just going to add, actually, it's nice, thanks for sharing your personal story, because I think it really helps others to relate, doesn't it? And you know, we've all, like I said before, we've all got these memories, and it's almost, when you begin to see it, it's almost fun and going, okay, well, you know, where did that come from? And I do say this quite frequently to my clients in sessions, you know, when the time arises and it's appropriate. I sort of remember that I was always deemed the very sensitive one in the family, and oh, Ali's very sensitive and she cries a lot, and you know, and I used to take that really to heart, and you know, that I was oversensitive. And now I think I'm so glad that I'm sensitive, and I actually, through using EFT and just being aware of myself, I actually appreciate my sensitivity and I use it in a way. Use it is probably the wrong word, but I suppose that allows me to be who I am in my business. It allows me to be authentic in who I am in my family life and with my friends. And funnily enough, there's two parts to this. One is accepting my sensitivity, but the other side of it is through doing inner work, I actually realise I'm not as oversensitive anymore. So that overwhelm I used to get probably a lot is not there as much. And I think that's because I've cleared out the bucket that was getting too full of emotions. But at the same time, I'm okay with being a little bit of a sensitive soul, and sometimes I might get a bit teary, and I think that's okay. And now, you know, when I think about my family saying that I'm the sensitive one, I actually like that.
Yes, I like to.
So yeah, that was what I was going to say. Yeah.
Sorry, Dar. I like to call it being in tune.
It's okay.
But of course, this is why we're such great.
Yeah, that's a nice reframe.
Yeah, it's being in tune with other people too, and it allows you to be compassionate and empathetic towards others. You know, in our practices. But you know, I know we've both cried in front of each other.
Yeah.
And why not?
Absolutely.
You know, when you
tears of reason. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Ali, that was really great.
So it's yeah. Thanks. Oh, I think we've had such a delay that I was waiting for you and you're waiting for me. But yes, I've enjoyed chatting with you today, Julie, and I think everybody can relate to what we've talked about. And I hope that those out there who struggle with that, not feeling good enough, you know, really find some comfort in what we're saying, that we're all the same and that we're all here to support each other. And certainly the EFT technique is so helpful at clearing out some of that, you know, the beliefs about why you feel you have to compare yourself to others. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into On the Couch sessions today with Julie and myself. And we'll be back for more next week. Is that right, Julie?
Absolutely. And you can contact us, Ali, you're happysoul.com, HAPPI soul.com, and I'm truly, madly, deeply happy.com. And Ali, have you got some? Can you learn EFT on your website? Have you got any instructions, or are you just, you know, just got your practitioner details?
No, I have on my. I think on the coaching page, or on the. I've got coach, teach, and retreat. So under the subsections, I've got how to tap. So I've got an instruction, a PDF instruction you can print off, and there's also a tap along on there about how to tap and where the points are. I think I've already mentioned before, but I also train the technique, so that's a whole different area of just learning it in a workshop. But yes, it's a simple tool, isn't it, that you can learn? Yeah.
Fabulous. So guys, you can go to either of our websites and learn it for free. And basically, you know, that's what we're about, you know, spreading this technique as far and wide as we can. Sometimes people need a session to get them started. Sometimes people prefer to work with a practitioner for the whole period. But other people, you know, just decide that they want to dabble in it first by themselves. So my feeling is that somehow or other you'll be implementing it in your life if it's meant to be there. Do you know what I mean, Ali? You know.
Totally. I think there's so many different ways to approach it, and that's exactly right. There's different ways you can implement it in your life. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, darling. Well, happy day to everyone out there, and we'll be in touch next week. See you soon, guys.
Bye.